Got it. So for those of you that are just joining us, this is Fuck Up Nights. It is an organization that's built out completely around breaking down some of the laws and rules, our internal laws about professional failure and career screw-ups, and how we can sort of get over them, how we can be more accepting of them, so we can, as they say, fail faster, fail forward, but more often than not, figure out what we can do better next time. So every single time we have 1 to 3 speakers, and we ask them to share some of their stories with us. And then we discuss sort of some of the things that went in before that we might have missed, with indications, how we might have negotiated better afterwards. So I have some experts in that space as well. And to get us rolling today, we're going to have Alan Rubin, who is actually are you the CEO and president of
Yes, I'm the Otsego County Chamber of Commerce, but that's just an interim role at the time, which probably won't be for the long haul. But I do own 5 private companies, which my first one began my senior year of college back in 1993.
So you're truly a serial entrepreneur.
It's been a good run. I hope it continues, right? But not without the bumps in the road. Not without a lot of fuck ups. Not without a whole lot.
Excellent. Those are important.
Yeah.
So I'll let you introduce yourself now. I'm going to step back and let you do your thing.
Sure. This is great. So maybe I didn't have much family at State College, but I got 4, including myself, on this call tonight. So that's pretty cool, right? So it's great to see those faces for sure. That always makes me smile. So just to touch, I listened to some of the other groups and other people that spoke on the links that you sent. And this is really just so cool because, especially from an entrepreneurial standpoint, wow, we don't ever follow any real course that's plotted for us. We basically are charting and plotting our own course always, and it never ends. Okay. So it made me think of just a timeline. And I know I got 7 to 10 minutes, so I can knock out a pretty good timeline from 93 to present in that time period. So I'm going to try and do that real quick for you. So my senior year of college, I saw a need for the delivery of all types of food and other items to the colleges where I went to school, which was in upstate New York. So there were 2 large colleges here. And so I created a concept called World is Yours Delivery. Great idea, right? So the only thing you can get was pizza or Chinese food where I was. And, I always wanted to have something else, maybe some sushi or, maybe that fettuccine Alfredo from that high-end Italian restaurant, but I always wanted more. So came up with this concept called World is Yours Delivery. Took it a little bit further, and I ended up contracting with all the major franchises here in the community here. Your McDonald's, your Subways, your Taco Bells, your Dunkin' Donuts, KFC, all of those places, along with the mom and pops. So the business model was I was charging a monthly fee to these businesses to operate. Plus I was receiving a small percentage from them, and I was charging a delivery charge to the customers who used the service. So we were basically a food and item taxi service. What happened is all the business was being directed through the customer base to all the franchises. So the franchises, what was the real problem with that? Sure, it was great. People were getting their Big Macs and their Whoppers, but the mom and pop store that I was promising to do business for that sold that, that Drury Lane Bakery sandwich wasn't getting a lot of the lion's share of business. So all of a sudden, all the small businesses decided out of nowhere, we're not going to pay this guy his monthly fee anymore for the services he's providing. Well, this monthly fee was the thing that was actually taking care of a lot of my operating expenses that I was built into a fixed way that I was doing things. Oh my God, you're not going to pay my monthly fee. What am I going to do? I start to think. So I come up with this idea and I approach them all and I say, look, this is how we're going to play this. Okay. Because now I'm frantic because I'm undercapitalized to begin with, as many entrepreneurs are. I'm 22 years old at the time. So I go to them, I say, look, we're going to change the model a little bit. You don't want to pay me the monthly fee. You don't feel that I'm giving you enough business. How about we do this? Rather than a monthly fee, you just kick me on a little bit of a higher percentage. So I'm going to take 20% of whatever I take from your establishment off the price and then deliver it to the customer for the same price that you're selling it plus the delivery charge, right? So what did that do? The only time they saw me walk in the door is when I was putting cash in the drawer. Okay, so there was a pivot that really worked because now the only time they saw me, they would have a smile on their face rather than be angry that they're paying me a monthly stipend for business they may not have been getting. Then in turn, they were able to allocate some money towards advertising, and their products were getting out there, and things got better from there. Okay, so that's World is Yours delivery. World is Yours delivery, we're out there and we're on the weekends. We have dozens of drivers out there providing this service, and they got this logo. Now, I don't know if you could tell, I used to have some decent sized arms, but the logo was this car with these two big arms coming out holding the world. Okay, and so this logo and these top lights are on these vehicles. And what happened is all of the students who were out in the town, there was no real heavy duty taxi cab service back in that area at the time. And this was in 1995. Started to ask my people if they could utilize us for ride services, right? So I'm like, okay, ride services, interesting. Okay, how many people? So my drivers would come to me and they'd say, okay, I got 5 people that need to go up to campus. Can I do it? I'd be like, can you do it? Yeah, you know what? Charge them $1 a head and take them up. Well, it got to the point I started to hire people with larger vehicles because now I wanted to put 6 to 8 passengers in the car, right? So here I am, I'm running this underground cab service. And all of a sudden, that's becoming more prevalent than my food delivery service, but I'm not running it with any taxi license. So now I got to run to City Hall and get myself a cab license for the business. And we quickly end up with a large fleet of vehicles, passenger vans, buses, 21 passenger buses, and so on and so forth. Now we're in this market and we're doing real good. Well, all of a sudden, one day, my drivers are out there on a Saturday night, and my buses and vans are all being pulled over by local police. Oh no, what's happening here? What is happening here? Well, I was so in my business that I didn't realize that City Hall, who makes money off putting riders in their city buses, created a 3-page ordinance that used to be and turned it into 27 pages of law, which then outlawed me being able to run vehicles larger than 5 passengers within their city. So all of a sudden, they're yanking all my large capacity vehicles off the road. What am I going to do about that, right? That's a pretty big thing that passes you by. We have to change the model now. We have to look at things a little bit differently. So I now become very involved with City Hall at that point. I'm young, but I have no choice, right? Because now I'm at the mercy of City Hall. So what do we learn from that, right? We learn that we need to engage everyone that might be able to impact your business, right? So I came up with this thing many, many years ago. It's an acronym. I call it the LIST process, LIST, right? And I think that these four components of the LIST process are very important. It's listen, identify, strategize, and then teach. Right. So we always have to be listening to everything that's going on around us, because if we're not listening, we're going to be missing out on so many different things that are happening around us. Right. And once we listen to everybody and we take all that information in, we're now identifying how we can work with someone, how we can collaborate, how we can benefit from the different things, how we can feed off of each other. Okay. So that's a real important thing. And then once we identify that, we determine our strategies on how we're going to move things forward. And then we're thinking about how we can teach that, how we're going to teach our employees, how we're going to teach their employees, how we're going to work together, how we're going to work as a team, right? So the list process begins right then and there in my mind, because I realized I need to engage full force with City Hall at this point, right? So that happens, and I have my taxi service, and I take off my big vans, and I add a whole bunch of cars, and we keep trudging away. Now we go into another business that I have, which is a medical courier company. Medical courier company is a huge healthcare network that needs courier services. I only find out about it because I'm providing some medical transportation. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I'm completely fine. I'm vaccinated. I don't need a mask in my own home. I just wanted to make that clear as I continue to cough here. But so I'm providing medical transportation for a lot of these healthcare networks. And all of a sudden, I see this opportunity for medical courier services. Medical courier services is a company that moves your blood and specimens and all the different paperwork from hospital to healthcare networks all around. So there was a long-standing company that held the contract for this medical courier services for this healthcare network. I'm asked to come in and I'm asked to bid on the contract. Now, from a bidding perspective, we had the infrastructure to certainly price the services better than the existing company that was doing it. But from a comfortability standpoint, that was going to have to be my sell. So I go ahead and I propose a price to the powers that be, and they're getting a lot of pushback. They don't want to change. They're comfortable with the services that are being provided. Can we really do it? So I go into a meeting and they basically say, look, your price is good, but we don't really believe that you would be able to do that price or work on that model that you're proposing to us. And I said, but I know I can. I mean, I know that I can. I have the infrastructure. I'm running 3 businesses out of the same space. And I know that I can. I'm repairing my own vehicles. We're just doing a whole host of things. No, we're just not going to do that. So what I did is I kind of circumvented that situation. I said, I know that we can do this. So this healthcare network happened to have affiliate hospitals located within a 9-county radius, and they don't often talk to each other about what one is doing or what the other's doing. So I went to an affiliate hospital and I saw that they had a small need for the services in comparison to the whole network contract that I was bidding on. And I said, here's a price model. Let me give this a shot. Let me come in and do this. With my mindset the entire time is now I'm going to have a pilot operation. Now I'm going to have some proof to go back to the table, to the whole network and say, yes, we can do it for this price model. So we go ahead and we land this deal with the affiliate hospital. And now we do it for about 60 days is all it really took. 60 days to show, hey, I want to go back into the people's office and I say, look, I just want to show you something. You told me that this wasn't feasible, that I couldn't do it for this price model and this structure. Here's the proof, right? We went over to this affiliate. We're providing the service. This is how we're doing it. This is the price model. Bam, they gave me another opportunity to bid. And within 6 months, and now 25 years later, I'm still providing that same service. So it worked out for us. So we're continuing with the medical courier service with this healthcare network, long-standing contract, and we built upon the program. We do trucking and we do surgical supplies and we do freight and we do, everything that they need moved, we move. So that was a really good pivot that we made when we thought we were kind of in the dust. I guess you really have to always think on your feet, right? This isn't something that's for anyone here that's entrepreneurial, this, right? Because we are always having to pivot. We are always having to navigate this road that is just never, ever, ever straight. I mean, and we actually have to enjoy the bumpy ride, because if we don't enjoy the bumpy ride, then what the fuck are we doing it for, really, at the end of the day, right? We really need to enjoy the ride. And I know that I get charged up when I come out of a room, and I know that I got through to the people in that room to understand what we bring to the table, what our services are, that it actually fires me up like winning a game or something, right? Because as another thing with an entrepreneur, usually you're a serious competitor. That's your mindset, right? So I enjoy the whole competitive aspect of it. I treat pretty much everything as a game, so I enjoy that. Brings me on to another thing that we do. So now, currently, I'm one of the leading non-emergency medical transport providers in the state of New York. And that's people that need to go to treatments and doctor's appointments, and the state pays the freight on that with portions paid through the federal government. So prior to us becoming the leader in that realm, we were the leading subcontracted company out to do it, because the individual counties used to have the specific fiscal responsibility to pay that. So they would have their own organization do this. And then the little dribbles, the little pieces they would throw to us. Now, it used to frustrate the shit out of me, because I'm like, I know I could do a better job than what they're doing. And I know I could probably do it more cost effective, but we're kind of at the mercy of them because it's the way the state of New York had it set up. So what do you do when you're the subcontractor and you know you could do better? Do you tell them you can do better? No, you just do the best fucking job you can and hope that eventually you're going to get a crack at it, right? So I'm at this subcontractor level for about 7 years and just doing the best I can. But really, some of those people that were dishing me off work, I'm like chomping at the bit. When am I going to get the chance to start taking this work ourselves? Back in 2013, the state switches up to a new model. They get a third-party provider that's now going to disperse all the work. So now I'm in the game. And being in the game, we built this on a couple of ways. First of all, better service, better price, availability, and we really built it on never saying no, right? You call us, you get in touch with our service for a ride, we're just not saying no. We're not available. And why? Because we had that personal touch, because we were right in the game. And that's the way we instructed our people. This is about doing as much work as we possibly can. We would spread ourselves into areas where I would lose money for the first 90 days just to put our feet in the door and show them we could do a better job. And then the momentum would start to kick in, and we'd start to maybe buy out some other companies there or just kind of knock them out. And it just became a real, again, competitive, fun game. Okay. So that is my transportation history in a nutshell. I follow the same methodology with my role as the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. My big focus is on pushing elected officials, advocating for business and economic development. And as anyone knows, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're doing taxi cabs or you're working on economic development for a region, you got to be willing to take the gloves off, right? It's a nasty, nasty fight. So you sometimes, not everyone's going to love you. As a matter of fact, I always laugh. There's not many people that I find in my life that I'm in between with. Either you love me or you hate me. And I'm really okay with that, really. I'm hoping everyone on this call, we fall more to the love side. But at the end of the day, that's pretty much how I roll. I just came from a meeting right 10 minutes before this call where I was dealing with a bunch of elected officials on incubator space and innovation centers and basically telling them, okay, here's our idea. And they're sitting there and they're looking with a gaze in their eyes. And I'm like, so show me the money. Where are you going to get me the money to do this? Because we need the money to do this, So you just can't be shy. You always got to be willing to push. And, while it's interesting because I don't ever picture myself coming out on the losing end of something. So while there are challenges all the time, I try and take the things that may have been where the other person's hand is raised and kind of turn it around a little bit to how I can maximize what I learned from the experience and how then I could win at the end of the day. Because life is about battles sometimes, right? So we have these tiny, tiny battles, but it's those who win the war, right? And so that's why I kind of just take everything in. And going back to the list process, listening is just such the key piece. Teach my kids that, you have to really understand what other people's needs and desires are in order to be able to move the needle ahead in whatever it is you're doing. And it's just so important. But that's pretty much the gist. I hope I hung with the system here and went with the plan. But
I feel like you'll never be a flat squirrel because you are always moving around the road, right?
Yeah, I'm like the game Frogger, but there are sometimes I do get squashed, but you got to rejuvenate and pick it up. That's what it really comes down to. I'm not. It's tough. There are times I've been beaten down, but you just got to keep fighting. Find the way. Find the back door, and that's really what helps you to move ahead.
So one of the things I think, as somebody who's been an analyst for a very long time, and I think I know a couple of others on here, that we sort of get in this do loop, and we have a hard time getting to decisions. Do you find that you either have to push people like us a little bit further, or do you also can get into those do loops of not being able to make a decision, or do you not have that privilege of that because you'll just go under?
Yeah, I that goes back to what I'm saying. So if I'm dealing with people of that nature that are putting out the numbers and putting out a bunch of things, all I'm trying to think about is how creative I can be, whatever model I'm putting forth, whether it's courier services or transportation or economic development. What am I going to be able to create by identifying what it is you need, right? And so that's always that comes with, hey, share. I want all your data. I want all your information because that knowledge is power on how I'm going to move forward.
Right. And but you also, it sounds like when you use your list method, you're putting people at ease because you're showing how you do use this in a way that's going to benefit them.
Absolutely.
And as opposed to
Yeah.
having it a one-way street. When you're dealing with the Chamber of Commerce, especially when you got sort of hit with that first set of issues around the vans, what was your immediate response? Because this was the first time you've ever engaged them. You're in your 20s and all of a sudden you're getting like more tickets than you've ever seen in your life.
Right. My initial reaction was to really bitch and moan about it and be like, the only reason you're doing this is because I found out that you receive federal funds for every seat that sits on your buses. This is complete and total bullshit. How could you do this to us? You didn't even come and talk to us. You passed a law and we're the only company here and we're getting people to and from and we're promoting Stop DBOI. We're keeping the streets safe. We're getting the students off the streets who are creating damage. So I thought, okay, now I'm starting to say things that actually make a whole lot of sense. Wow, I could really cater to a whole other group here saying, look what City Hall did to us. They stopped us from providing safer streets. they are stopping us from getting people off the streets that are creating property damage. So now I'm starting to figure out how I'm going to mobilize some allies in the project, right? But initially, I was just so upset. I mean, like, oh my God, they're taking my money. But then as I started to fight for myself, I realized I got other people who will help fight with me on this subject. And that's kind of the way it rolled. And that created a mobilization that really created a lot of support. And then because they weren't going to change the law, that happened, right? The law happened. They weren't going to change it. So even though I had alliances and support, they weren't going to change the law. So I just changed my business model, but did realize that I now had allies for other things that I may need them down the road for. So that was a really good thing that came out of it.
Does anybody have any other questions? I have a few, but we've got quite a few other people, including I know Christopher James. Thanks for joining us. Who's I met through the Defense Innovation Accelerator, who's an entrepreneur as well. Are there any other people that sort of have things that are on your mind other than how can we clone this like drive to find new ways to create value?
I would just make a comment that Alan's list process, that L, I sat at a purchasing guy's desk for over 40 years. And on the other side was always somebody trying to sell something. And one of the principal lessons I learned was that the best of them listened. They kept their mouth shut and listened. You could go on and on and on, and they would listen. And when I asked about it and probed, the lesson was you were created with 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them proportionately. And I just thought that was such a telling thing. It's really spot on.
That's true. That's true.
I want to jump in and add, and most people know me, I'm a serial broadcaster, so I don't observe the listen principle very well. But the thing that I picked up with Alan is probably the most powerful anger storm to norm idea process I've ever heard. Most people get caught in the process of fury and draw all the conclusions about how the world's against them. And what I really took away was Alan projects out those things that infuriate him, and at the same time is making mental note of how all those things are going to be the enablers to solve the problem. And I don't think I've ever quite heard that before. So that's really powerful. I know I probably never get there. I probably storm for days and draw the conclusion that I'm the wounded party. But I love the resilience that all of that energy turns into the positive actions he can go take.
Thank you.
So I have another question for you, Alan. One of the things I've been talking to one of my industry partners with is sort of the industry 4.0 model and the manufacturing back here domestically, and how we can start to change, offshoring back to onshoring. And one of the things that we said is, hey, we need to get, Congress involved and our local groups involved in this to be more engaging. How did you do that? I mean, I imagine I can go pick up the phone and then it goes, yeah, we'll get right back to you. Click. How did you engage them?
So it's interesting. So for me, I don't have much of that issue. So I dealt with a ripple effect from all of that end of things, more along the lines of, okay, so I have to purchase hundreds of vehicles a year, right? And so wouldn't it be great if we didn't have vehicles spiking in the places that I'm buying them from, not be able to get their hands on the merchandise? Because that's what's really happening here. So I saw a huge spike in equipment purchases and things like that. Again, when we think about some of these broad problems from the chamber perspective, I'm working very closely with a congressman here in our region on a panel for what's called the Made in America, Buy in America Act. That's Congressman Delgado. Okay.
Right.
This is a big focus on a bipartisan bill that he's working to sponsor, where we're talking of exactly that, why it is so important that we're able to manufacture things right here in this country. So when we talk about offshoring and onshoring, obviously the pandemic has really taught us that we damn well better start figuring out how we're going to do things right here in this country, or we're going to be at the mercy of so many other people. And so whether it's me when it comes to the purchase of cars, and or whether it's someone that needs computer chips for their appliances to be built and manufactured here, we just have to start thinking outside the box. But is there really a silver bullet for that right now? I don't think so. I think it's going to really require a lot of push and a lot of energy. And you know what? We're also talking about price, right? Because I took on a role. I have a good friend who decided to manufacture N95 masks right here in the States. Okay. And so I was helping him get that off the ground. And our biggest problem is even where people were talking about made in America, buy in America, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to do. Once they saw the price of a 3M mask coming from China versus what they were going to have to pay for an American-made mask, you better believe they were sticking with that 3M mask out of China. And the only reason why they were going with our masks is because they couldn't get them here, right? So this mindset is everyone can be bold and bold and bold, but at the end of the day, when they're writing their checks, they're not necessarily thinking or writing those checks the same way that they're putting out the information about how they feel about the situation. So that's a tough battle that we're always going to have.
Yeah, and we heard that out today out of Bloomberg. They were talking about the CEO of Target saying, yeah, price is a big issue. We're trying to maintain price costs right now, but everything else is hitting us hard. And so it's hard when your margins are 3 and 4% to be able to absorb some of those price costs
Right.
from materials. But you're right, there's a lot of different things that are going into this question. One of the things that I think is not paid attention to enough is what you talked about was your creative process and the ways you sort of think beyond what they call legally the four corners doctrine and create new value and look for new opportunities. And it's actually one of the reasons why I brought Brad in originally was because I took his class a long time ago, and he taught me how to break out of that confirmation of whatever's here is what there is. And so I learned from Brad how to do it, but you didn't have that same training. Where did you learn to sort of figure out where to push and what to pull and where you could make the difference?
Goes back to the list process. My way of doing things is all about the individual person that I'm conducting business with or dealing with. That's why Zoom isn't the easiest world, because sometimes it's difficult to get a read on the people you're dealing with. But my best approach is really, again, going back to listening, understanding, seeing what people are interested in. Now you look at different things now in the future. You can go on social media, figure out what someone's all about. Hey, I see this guy hikes, or this person hikes the Adirondack Mountains. Well, I hike the Adirondack Mountains. So we start having conversation about hiking, right? You kind of break the ice a little bit. But it's really just about understanding each individual person and how you're going to get them to see what it is you're seeing by understanding what their needs and desires are. That's kind of what I've done. It's become very natural in that realm.
You also have your own needs, like Brad was pointing out. How do you adjust for gas prices?
Yeah, so it's interesting.
That.
So I'm set up in such a way with my mate where I have my most people that service my company where they actually pay the gas themselves. Okay, so what I had to do is really just allow them in their leases to be set with what I call a fuel surcharge. So I'm losing 5% on their take for the increase in gas prices, which is substantially less than if I was paying all the gas on the vehicles based on the price increase that we're seeing here. But at the end of the day, they appreciate the gesture, and we're just going to hold the line. Now, when it comes to my other contracts, we always built in, because this isn't the first time that gas prices have soared in our tenure in this business. So all of our contracts have a built-in fuel surcharge. If it goes over a certain amount, we're able to kick it back to our clients. And that's kind of where I am on some of that contractual work. So that's kind of alleviated. My biggest problem right now, and I don't know how it's going to change, is the cutbacks from the state of New York related to a lot of service I provide. The budget shortfall in New York due to the pandemic was tremendous. And for the work that I do, they decided to just take a very heavy off the top off everything that I do. And so how do I deal with that? To be honest with you, I make that percentage less in money. That's really what's happening right now, because I'm kind of at their mercy. It's a shame that it's the case. I guess if you're insulated enough that you're going to be okay through that, and we thank God are, then we keep pushing along. What I can tell you is this, though. So because we were insulated enough and these different cuts and different things, a lot of people in this industry around me are dropping out of the business. And so what that's doing is it's increasing my business. I'm also taking advantage of the labor shortage a little bit too. So there's a big issue with CDL drivers and bus drivers and things such as that. All of my people that drive for me, we train and are multitasked to do bus work or taxi work or medical courier work. And so now, because a lot of people are dropping out of bus work or different things like that, I have a whole new bus division that we just built on through the pandemic. That's really been a huge source for us, and the school districts pay and so on and so forth. So that's been a whole additional business that we've taken. So how do we deal with gas prices or budget cuts? We look at other ways we can create another bucket so that we can make up for it. And that's essentially what we've done.
So Brad asked about line 5. Brad, what do you mean by line 5?
Oh, there's another pipeline they're going to close apparently, or they're talking about it, and that's going to, triple the gas price. I just was wondering if
triple the gas prices.
Yeah, the line 5, the one that runs through Wisconsin, and
Okay.
I was just wondering if you heard about it or if you were prepared for it. That's all.
Yeah, I will be. Yeah, that's tough. I couldn't imagine triple the gas price. Couldn't imagine going to the pump and paying close to $10 a gallon. I'll tell you that. But you know what? And we're looking at there's different grants for green energy. If I was to, I'm not a a government company, but I do have a lot of the connections because I provide a lot of work that the state and federal government pays for. There's certainly grant opportunities I'm looking into right now to shift to electric cars and different types of hybrid models and things like that. Hey, I would love if I could just go full autonomous cars right now. Can't even imagine the headaches that I would be relieved from if I had that going. But that's a little bit down the road. Now, I'm a rural area transport provider, so there's a lot of difficult challenges we have with electric cars and things like that. So we're just looking at some different models and different things on how we can move forward. But yeah, there'll be things coming down the pike, and my hope is that there'll be grants and different opportunities that we can tap into that will support us on that.
Yeah, that's a good point. One of the things that I think each of us gets comfortable with when we're not in the entrepreneurial role is having a very, I don't want to say stagnant, but sort of the same. And it sounds to me like you are always sort of thinking not just one step ahead, but like 5 steps ahead. Do you ever find that exhausting?
No, I love it. Like when Uber was threatening to come to our area, this is a funny story. There was a group out of Cornell University that was creating this thing called Red Route, which was a really similar app to what Uber was doing. Now, Uber wasn't legalized in New York State. New York State was one of the last ones to bring it on, but I saw it about to come. So I got this company, Red Route, these guys in an incubator at Cornell University that I reached out to. And I say, tell me about this Red Route. So what I did is I didn't just take on their service. I actually invested in their company, right? So me and my partner, we both invested into their business, and we used this model Red Route. So we were already doing app-based ride service before Uber even was legalized here in the state. And some people took to it, some people didn't, because again, we're in a rural area, so it's a little bit tricky, the Uber model in a rural area. So we did this. And the funny thing is so now 8 years later, I just got an email from the company we invested in, because we developed our own app after that. But this company, Red Route, recently is on the precipice of going public. And so now we have all these shares because we invested in their company. I'm like, wow, this is a great email to get on a Tuesday morning, So that was now our note, it's a convertible note and so on and so forth. So we're looking forward to see how that rolls. But yeah, so just kind of always trying to stay ahead of the curve is really what we do. It's not exhausting. I love it. I like it. It's a little stressful.
So I really like what you do also. And I know Scott wants to weigh in here too. What I heard you saying over and over again is how your drivers would say this, or how the workers would say that. And you get this constant feedback loop. And I think that's one of the things, especially as organizations grow, they sort of start losing that connection with the people who are doing the work. Are you able to maintain that even now with all the drivers you have?
Oh yeah. No, I'm always wanting to know what's going on. I always say, with successful businesses, you're able to respect and dealing with the janitor to the CEO of the hospital. I treat people for people. I come from a decent family. I'm glad to see some of them on, but we've always respected people for who they are, not what they are, not their socioeconomic status. You treat people with respect who earn that respect, who behave a certain way. And so that's why I relate very well to my workforce. And that's been a big benefit to my company, because even during the pandemic, I didn't lose many staff who could have left and collected unemployment, because all I did, I mean, I had to talk people off the ledge on a regular basis to keep my place running. But that whole team mentality, and that we're doing it for each other here, and we're going to get through this. And, I say it with passion because I mean it, because I built this thing from nothing. So it's very important to me. I want to do something here. So I can get back on this call, but I'm going to have to re-zoom in on my phone, because I do have to get into my car and I do have to make a trip to Albany, which is about an hour and 15 minutes away. So I'm going to jump off now. And if you don't mind, I can jump back on in like 3 or 4 minutes. Whether you want to talk to me more or not, I'd love to hear what the rest of the panel,
I'd love to hear more from you. So yeah, we'll wait for you to come back. And in the meantime, we can bring up some questions and everything else, and we'll hold on.
Sounds good. So you're going to
All
see
right.
me try and come in from my cell phone from the car. You won't see my smiling face, because that would be dangerous. But you will see my smiling face, just not my live smiling face. All right.
Got it.
All right.
All right. Thanks.
Bye. Bye.
So while Alan stepped away, I see Brad has a commentary, and I'd love to hear from you.
Me?
Yes.
I had commentary.
Oh, I thought you looked like you had a commentary.
Oh no, I was just.
Sorry.
This was great. Yeah, wow, really cool. And I love the list. It's such a great idea, and it's so funny because it is very similar to the OODA loop, right? And we talked about that before, but it's very. You must observe. You must listen. First, that starts it, and then strategy is huge, right? I mean, the identifying the strategy part is seems like the cohering portion of it. But yeah, it's really interesting to see how the adaptation, just because of you're constantly, as you pointed out, Brigitte, the constant loop, like the constant circle of, okay, now there's another problem, and now there's what's the solution to that one, and that's so very entrepreneurial. It's awesome.
It's so true. Scott, you had something else you wanted to weigh in on?
Yeah, when Alan gets back on, I'm gonna throw some rocks at him big time, because he's got an amazing energy and amazing style, but I really want to hear about some of the stumbling blocks, some of the challenges that he had to power through, because he's the kind of personality where he's already putting them behind him. Once he's got the victory, he's solved the problem, he's moving to the next thing, but I want to force him to reflect. And the other thing I think is, it feels like he's going to be digging for oil and building a gas station next. It would not surprise me if we hear from him in 6 months that if there's a pipeline problem, then Alan is somehow shunting gasoline in his facility and starting a pipeline. I mean, he's always had that kind of energy, but I'm really hoping I can hear about that. It didn't go as planned. We didn't get where we wanted to go. It fell apart, and we had to rebuild. All the assumptions failed, because he's the kind of guy where, like I said, he's moving past that. That's not holding him back, but there's probably so many lessons to unpack in how he got through that, more than just with hubris and energy, but with his intellect. He's always been incredibly sharp.
That's a good question. I find myself one of those people that, oh my God, I messed up. Now I've got to ruminate on it for the next 17 years, possibly longer. And I think that also ends up where I get to decision paralysis also, because I don't want to make that mistake again. Just ask Scott how long it takes us to buy a car. So I think especially you'll see this a lot in DOD too. And Zach says the same thing. So where our government, where we end up putting a lot of processes in place and a lot of things to keep protecting ourselves. And so as soon we don't even know what we're trying to get to. And Alan's back. So let's talk to him about sort of how he's managed to do that. Let me see if I can, without getting stuck in creating so much process that we no longer even touch any of the risk. So is he back on, or Alan dropped off again? It looks like he fell off again. I don't know if he just dropped out. But yeah, I think it's sort of interesting when we talk about like acquisition process. And for those of you that aren't in the government, if you want to see one thing that's uglier than making laws, it's the acquisition process that the government goes through to buy a spoon, right? I mean, we wonder how we got a $20,000 hammer from NASA. Look at how painful it is to try to buy it. So Alan, So Scott had some questions for you about when you do deal with these big rocks that hit you, and they sort of stop you on your feet. How do you take them on, especially when you had your cab license? You know, these are not things that are easily taken in with just like, okay, here's $500.
No,
Sometimes it's a long process.
I want to refine that. I want to hear about something where all the assumptions failed. Alan, I want to hear where you had a going in position to an opportunity, everything was headed your way, and your assumptions failed and the world fell out from under you. What was your process? What was that example? And what was your process to get through that?
So I touched on that briefly with the medical courier contract initially, because our price was so much better. Our service was better. We had so much to offer from an infrastructure standpoint. And when we walked in the door and they told me no, I really, sure, I gave you the short version. Oh, I ran to the other affiliate hospital and I, convinced them. But that I really felt absolutely decimated after that, because it made me feel, I didn't feel legitimate to the area. Like I felt like I was being treated like an outcast, like because the hospital network itself was a real good old boy network here locally. And it just felt like we were turned down because we just were these downstate guys who were trying to get this business and they just were never going to accept us. So that level of, I think my feelings were really hurt. I think more than anything, like not even the fact of losing the business. I just felt like they weren't treating me like I had a legitimate shot at it. I also blamed it a little bit on my age. I was pretty young at the time. I was, I think 25, 26, I was probably turning 26 at the time. So I just felt like they weren't taking me seriously. And that really made me feel decimated. It was a really big contract. I was very prepared to get it. I just didn't see why I didn't. And there was a lot to digest. And so it took me a little while to come up with that pivot idea. I'll be honest with you, in the 26 years we're in business, the only time I ever saw my business go down was COVID. So if that says anything, that's the only time I watched my numbers take a blast is through COVID. So that was tough. COVID was really tough for me. If you want to talk about feeling like the rug being pulled out from under you, that was pretty tough. My job is to go out and build my business and be the face and just keep growing. And when I couldn't do that anymore, I was very confused. Probably went in a little bit of depression there for a little while. It was very hard, very hard.
And you say you're continuing to sort of pivot through that because, the 3 months turned into 6 months, turned into 22 months now, and you're continuing to sort of look for new ways to, find opportunity in this. Where are you linking up to, and how do you garner and figure out when something's a failure and you shouldn't continue with it? Do you do like a month? Do you try 6 months? What do you do? Because you talked about the 90-day, loss leaders. How do you manage some of that?
Yeah. So, through this whole thing, I just like people, right? I think I built my business on my relationships with people. And so as I'm continuing to work with all my clients again, so I talk about this a lot. I look at everything I do from the starting point as a tree, right? And then every person that I'm communicating with related to the work I do for the people that related to that tree, I'm just looking at how I'm going to build branches off that tree, right? And so a lot of what I do fills a lot of the same niche. So if I'm in an underserved county where there's a certain segment of the population that need non-emergency medical transport, then it's likely that now they're going to need ambulance services. So what do I go ahead and do? And I open up an ambulance service. Okay, now I have ambulance service.
We're losing you a little bit, Alan, after ambulance service.
A lot of the population, there's a lot of special needs.
Alan's dropping off a little bit, so when he gets a chance, we'll see if we can hear him a little bit better. It's the part of rural.
So what am I connecting with?
There he is.
Okay.
Alan,
the needs of the people that I'm working with. You here, right? What else is available to us? So you.
Hold on, Alan. We sort of lost you a little bit after the ambulatory ambulance sets. Could you walk us back through that a little bit more?
Yeah. So what happens is I look at everything we're doing as a tree, right? And then we're building branches off that tree. So one of those branches is ambulance service. Okay. And so we're starting to serve the same market. And then we're starting to see, okay, this underserved part of the population, There's also a need for the transport of special needs for children to different programs and things like that. So we start to see where everything we're doing becomes interconnected, and how can we build the different buckets that we can create for ourselves. And that's been again, just because of the relationships that we've built with the different clients that we work with.
So do you look more to well, a lot of these places, like you've said, there's competition. Are you looking to partner? And at what point do you partner versus make a decision to say, no, we're going to do our own thing?
I'll be honest with you. Normally I go in and I go in very aggressive, and I sense the vulnerability of the people that are already there. And I just provide, if I think that it's their vehicles that are a problem, then I go in with brand new cars. If I think it's their drivers being a little bit dirty and shaggy, I make sure that my drivers have the shiniest uniforms. You know, I start to really determine where the competition is and where they're vulnerable. And then I just kind of do exactly the opposite in those situations. So that's been a winning recipe for us. We don't buy out many companies. Usually we take the market share.
How do you deal with things like going back to the cab licenses and how long some of those government processes can take? How do you, I don't want to say hop over them, but how do you manage through them faster so that you don't get stuck in their decision paralysis and become a victim of that?
Oh my God, Brigitte, thank you so much for bringing that up. That is my biggest challenge. And I didn't even think of the challenge as I'm having this great conversation about how wonderful things are. But relying on the state agencies for approvals, whether it's the DOT or the DOH, is a freaking nightmare. And COVID has made it so much worse. And so how do I deal with it? It's a very impatient process. That work definitely is impeded by that decision paralysis. But you know what? I'm not the only one in the industry facing it. So it's not uncommon. So basically, our vendors, our clients have to sometimes be patient as to how we can get vehicles on the road to provide the service and so on and so forth, or drivers compliant and things like that. COVID has made that process an absolute nightmare. So honestly, I deal with it. I've come to realize through this whole pandemic, there are some things that you just cannot control. And if you beat yourself up over it, you're just going to have sleepless nights and eat bad food.
Yeah.
You start to go into your vices, the things that you do when you have no control over a situation. And so for me, it's sleepless nights and chocolate cake. So yeah, it does. It's not a good combination. So if you can't control it, just do what you're doing and just be patient, because that's all you can't control. Period.
That's a good point. I think one of the things also is sometimes we say, well, they'll get back to me. But, and then you can do the other side, which is I'm going to call them every hour on the hour until they do get back to me. And then all your stuff gets moved to the bottom.
Right.
Where do you find yourself, or how do you manage that nuanced way of finessing the system? I lost you again.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
You lost me again.
You're on. It's okay.
Are you good? I mean, there are times I enlist my attorneys.
We're losing you again, Alan.
I'll give them the green light to pay their hourly fees to really try and push the needle. Yeah, Rory, you got me or no?
I have you now. Yeah. I can hear
This
you
is good.
now.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a little
much
spotty
better.
for a little bit here. All right, great. So sometimes I'll enlist my high-priced attorneys to get involved and try and push the needle a little bit. But I'll tell you, over the last few years, because of my engagement with a lot of the elected officials, I will try and rattle their cages to get me connections and see if they can help me along the way. Yeah, I do. I do tap into that. I don't like to ask favors a lot, but certainly we have a local senator here who is the chairman of the insurance committee for the state of New York. I jumped all over him when I was running into insurance issues, and he actually solved the problem for us in a very quick way where we were battling. And that didn't cost me anything, just goodwill. So that was a really
Wow.
good maneuver. Yeah.
One of the things that I work with a couple of think tanks, and they're just like, well, we talk a lot about data, especially the data from COVID and how we can use it to make and push the needle in some different directions. And you talk a lot about getting information from others. Is it helpful for us to start to drive some of these conversations with these elected officials when we talk about like, hey, this is how this is affecting, businesses around me? Does that
Yeah.
really make a big difference?
It does. And I'll tell you why it does, because what the pandemic has really done for us is it's allowed the opportunity for some real creative out of the box thinking, where most of the time our government officials aren't on board for something like that. But this is such an unprecedented time that what I've really come to learn is nothing is off the table. And so when I have conversations, whether it's creating innovation centers and incubator spaces in areas, or how we can build workforce and looking, right now we're working on bringing a refugee settlement community to our area, because there are a lot of different pushes. We need workforce because a lot of people aren't willing to go back to work. So what are we going to do? We need to bring feet on the street. So we're getting support in so many ways for things, and quicker answers than I've ever seen before from the elected officials. So my advice is, anything that you're dealing with that can require that can be impacted by elected officials, nothing is off the table right now. Again, unprecedented times, out of the box solutions, creative paths to be created. They seem to be on board, at least the ones that I'm working with these days.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing is, what indicators do you have that somebody's not going to be open to creativity and that you just need to find a way around them?
Yeah, when they have an agenda that's usually it's people that have an agenda that's not in line with yours, right? So you just go to the next person, because again, you don't want to waste your time. If you've listened, because not always when you listen and identify are good things going to come out from that, right? There are often times we listen and identify and we say, okay, I'm going to check this one off the list and we're going to move on to something else. So you just got to be able to find the next person in line if you're not getting a positive reaction from the person.
It's interesting you say that you just sort of fell off a little bit, but I'll add that sometimes when you ask for the next person in line, you're called, like in my case, a Karen. Okay, Karen, of course you want the manager. So
Yeah.
how do we avoid getting that, like the Karen labels? And I'm sorry to all the Karens out there, but.
So what I'm saying is, what I was saying was, if you are talking to someone and you implement the list process as discussed earlier, and you really have determined by listening to that person that you're not going to get anything from it, that nothing is going to come from it, there's no chance of collaboration, then you need to wave the white flag and move on to the next person. That's what I'm saying about that. And I try and go right to the top all the time, just because I feel I deal with a lot of my situations a lot of times only when they're elevated. Like I have to step into my company role a lot if I'm not building my business. I have to deal with things because they've been elevated, right? So I just believe that if I'm going to engage in a conversation, then I'm going to try and elevate it right off the bat.
So one of the books I read for my group was Team of Teams by McChrystal, and I was really inspired by his idea of, hey, you guys got to push the decisions down and make your teams and your staff more autonomous. And that sounds good, for some organizations. If you're, on the front line in Afghanistan, we shouldn't be calling back to Washington, D.C. to ask them if I should take the hill. But if you're an entrepreneur in, northern part of New York, is that a good thing? Are you doing that? Or how do you maintain giving your staff autonomy and allowing them to make decisions, but also not ending up in a lawsuit?
Yeah, I have to truly rely on the decision making of my staff, and trust me, there are plenty that don't make great ones. But because they're not under a roof where we're guiding them, they're out there in the general public, providing the services. I rely on their decision making, and again, how do we do that to make them comfortable from the minute they come into the company? I try and meet each and every person that comes and works for my company at some point or another. They need to put a face with who they're representing when they're out there. So my company is A&D, which is myself, Alan, my partner Dave, and basically they get to meet Alan, Dave every time they come on board. I know every single person that works for me, from the again, from my top level directors to my drivers, to my medical couriers, to my mechanics, to cleaning staff, billing staff. I make sure they can put a face with the business and have an understanding of what my expectation is. And it's funny, the first conversation we have with them is, remember, you're in a marked vehicle. So whatever you're doing in your own car, if you come to a crosswalk, I don't care if the person is standing there and you don't think they're going to move, you're going to wait and let them cross the street, because you better believe they're going to remember if you don't let them cross, but they will not remember if you do. So you got to really try and represent appropriately when you're out there.
Right. One of the things I found also was really helpful when I was sort of learning some of the creative negotiation techniques was being able to sort of model and in some ways have a mentor around that. Do you guys sort of build some of that? Do you guys share a lot of those stories amongst you? Like, how did you deal with this particularly hard, to handle person, or, hey, this person's really super great, we should be like taking that person and cloning them. Are you,
right.
Do you share those models?
We do. We most definitely do. And I got to be honest, our business grew most when we offered incentives. And I'll make you laugh. This is a funny one. So we had a guy that came in that started working for us from the road. And as we were building that Medicaid business, once the third party provider came in, his big focus was growing the business from the outside in. And as he was doing this, we brought the numbers up to a certain point. So we brought him into the office and he became our medical transport director. And we offered him a percentage of all of the gross volume that came in from the work that we were getting in that way for him to guide it along. It ended up that this man's commission checks were so astronomical that it was almost shocking. And like people, my payroll people were coming to me and saying, do you know what Brian's commission check is today? And I was like, God bless him. And they're looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, we have an arrangement with him. This is what we told him we were going to do. This is what he deserves. Right. And so they were mind boggled to the fact that I was comfortable with paying someone that amount of money to do the work that he was doing. But he was guiding and building the business from the inside out. And so this is what we told him we were going to do. It didn't matter that the business went up 800%. He still deserved the tick that we told him we were going to give. And, we share that story and we offer that opportunity to a lot of our employees that are overseeing counties and services that we provide, because it works. Because when people have skin in the game, what they give to the company is the possibilities are limitless. They just want to give. And, at the end of the day, if he's doing that well, where the owners sit. So it's really important that we share those stories, that people understand that you can advance. One of the joys of our business is watching people come aboard and then watching them put their kids through college. And just a really big part of team mentality is watching the growth of the people around you.
Yeah, a couple of quick comments. I think this came up in another session we had about negotiating. And I had pointed out that a lesson I learned a very long time ago was the worst adversary that you can have in negotiation is someone who's been granted broad authority to say no and no authority to say yes about anything.
Right.
Right. And the other one that you just mentioned with the large commission checks to that individual who did so much for you. As I had said before, being across the desk from salespeople for all those years, it was easy to see that there were salespeople who deserved it because they were the business. I was never speaking to ABC Company. I was speaking to Charlie Robinson. To me, he was ABC Company. And if the pitch was successful, then he's the one who earned it. But I had seen companies destroy themselves when owners get jealous of what their employees are getting paid.
Right.
When they've got piles of money in the bank and stock options and all this other stuff, but still get jealous that they have to give another nickel to that guy with the worn out shoes and a rumpled suit who's knocking on the doors and doing the business. and
You know what you call the guy? You know what you call the guy who you get upset that you're giving that extra money to build your business? You know what you call him if you get upset? Competition.
true.
So we're hitting up against 6 o'clock, and I want to be mindful of everybody's time. But this has been fantastic, Alan, and I really appreciate you coming in, especially because it's so wonderful to get a perspective from somebody who's not comfortable or who's got comfortable with being what we would call uncomfortable, and moving forward. And especially as somebody who's just entering entrepreneur space and wondering if I'm doing something wrong when everything is constantly in flux, and finding out that no, I have to change my mindset and I have to start getting comfortable with things not being perfect. And also I need to be comfortable with making decisions quickly and knowing I'm basing on the best facts I have right now. I think that's what I'm hearing from you.
Right. And you know what? If you make a decision that's wrong, Brigitte, it's okay, because then you're going to figure out how to pivot that decision to be the best decision that you ever made. Because it doesn't matter. Wrong decisions happen, but how you navigate through those will make you better at the end of the day. No question about it. Just got to keep fighting.
Right. Right. So I'm going to let everybody else weigh in. Does anybody else have any thoughts? Come on, Scott. I know you got a couple of things, or Brad.
Well, this was fantastic. I mean, wow, Alan is you're amazing. Really great story, great strategy behind it. I love your list. I'm going to call it a list loop. Even if you don't, I'm still going to call it that. Your list loop is awesome, and yeah, I mean, this was really fantastic. The analysis paralysis. It's funny. So in aviation, we have a story. It's called flying by the cat and duck principle. You see, in your cockpit, you always have a cat and a duck. You see, because the duck will never fly in clouds, and the cat, whenever it falls, always lands on its feet. And so by following that method, there's another one. I don't know if you ever heard the cat and the fox story. Real quick, I just got to tell you, it's 5 seconds. So the cat and the fox are walking along. Have you ever heard it? They're walking along, and you know, the cat, they're kind of picking up food along the way. And the fox is making fun of the cat because it's you know, you only know one trick. You're a one trick thing. All you know how to do is run up a tree. So all of a sudden they hear the horns, you know, from the hunt, and the cat quick runs up the tree, and the fox is showing how it can go double back on itself and run fast and run small, and of course it gets caught by the dogs and eaten. So you know, I guess that's the analysis paralysis, Aesop's and Pilot's version. But
yeah.
So thank you very much. It's awesome.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate that.
And it's not going to.
So Scott and then Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to add in Alan that, you know, I am biased because I know Alan's family, and it is a good family. So when you said earlier, he comes from a good family, and I know how he was raised because I witnessed it. So I can vouch for that. But his spirit is indomitable, and I don't know how you replicate that. He makes it sound like you can put it in a bottle and do it, and I don't know how you do that. But I feel like as a touchstone, certainly for this activity, for this event, it's been great because instead of just going over something that disabled him, all we heard was every way to get around being disabled and moving around, and just, you know, someone moves left, Alan moves right. And it was just really exciting to hear that. It never fails to energize me to hear that kind of personality stemming from an entrepreneur. He's not going to be stopped.
Thank
Thank you. So Kevin, you wanted to weigh in?
I just had a couple anecdotes, I guess, to reinforce what Alan said. So years ago in the late 70s, on a ski trip, I met a woman who was a salesperson for GE in Britain, in the UK, in London. And they had a weird perverse structure where she had hit her sales target in like October and literally couldn't get paid if she made another sale until it was the next year in January. I remember thinking at the time how incredibly brain dead stupid that was, because why would you disincentivize your top performers from making more sales when you make more money as a business. I mean, I wasn't into business at all. I just thought it was crazy. So back to this point of view. So if the person makes the sales and the business goes up, then write the check, right? The second part is on the delegation part is, I was talking to Stephen Wolfram one day, and he mentioned that he had an interesting situation where they were having trouble with their infrastructure and they couldn't seem to fix it. And in the course of a series of conversation, he understood the problem was he was really the tier 3 help desk, because only he had the authority to commit the resources and the people and the time and the money to get the problem fixed. And he couldn't delegate that down. He had to make that call. And it was part of it was interesting is A, he figured it out, but B, is it how long it took him to figure it out, because he's a genius, right? So so it was, that art of what you can delegate and what you can't, much to Alan's, I talk to every employee in the company kind of thing. There's some art to this. It's not, pull out Newton's formula, second formula for thermodynamics and everything works fine. There is art. Some of it's based on your personality and how your brain works, and you mess with that at peril.
Thank you. It's good.
All right, so it's 6 o'clock and it's time for everybody to go and enjoy their time. But I really wanted to say thanks again, Alan. Please give me a heads up if anybody has a topic they want to talk about. And the next one is probably going to be beware of geeks bearing gifts next month, Christmas and everything else. And then January will probably be apology not accepted. So if you guys have some things, there are some ideas about what you would do there, do that. But we always invite people back to join us at any time to talk about things, especially Alan, looking for new solutions, because I think a lot of times we get stuck in our own circle of advisors and they look a lot like us. And so it's hard to see outside for other areas. But I appreciate you guys.
If I could just say one thing quick in closing, because you guys made me feel so comfortable tonight, and I really appreciate that. And since I get to see the faces of my uncle and my cousins, I just want to say how much I love you guys, and it's great to see you. And I look forward to time that we spend together in the future. And thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
All right.
Thanks so much, guys.
Love you too, man.
Take care. All right.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Laura, you want me to stay on? Thanks, Zach. Bye-bye. Thank you, Alan.
Stop the recording.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, how you doing?